Gold Thread Studios. Kingston to Seoul. Episode 2. The Drawing. One weekend, and Khadine Campbell has learned 5 things about Seoul. The first, the subway is navigable if you accept, fully and without argument, that you will be wrong about it at least once per journey. Not lost exactly. Just briefly, confidently incorrect, standing on the wrong platform with the total conviction of someone who has checked the map 3 times, watching the train she needed close its doors and slide away with quiet, indifferent efficiency. She has made peace with this. She has decided it is character building. She has missed 4 trains in 7 days and photographed the platforms of all of them, because the light underground is a particular shade of amber that she cannot stop thinking about. The second, convenience stores here are a spiritual experience. She does not mean this lightly. She means that at 2 in the morning, disoriented by the time difference and hunger, she walked into the nearest GS25 and stood in front of the hot food section for what might have been 15 minutes, not choosing, just standing, receiving. The triangular rice rolls. The little fish-shaped pastries filled with sweet red bean. The canned coffees lined up in their dozens. It felt like a church designed by someone who understood what people actually needed. The third, the fellowship cohort, is kind. They are also exhausting in the specific way that groups of creative people are always exhausting, everyone performing their creativity slightly, everyone speaking about their work in the particular tone that means they want you to ask a follow-up question. She likes most of them. She does not want to spend every meal with them. Somi is the exception. Somi laughs too loudly and says exactly what she thinks and orders extra food without asking and gives it to Khadine without announcement. Somi is fine. Somi can stay. The fourth, Korean spice, is not the same as Jamaican spice. She knew this intellectually before she arrived. She knows it differently now. The knowledge is in her mouth, in the specific bright heat of gochugaru that builds from the front of the tongue and moves steadily backward, nothing like the deep, fruiting heat of Scotch bonnet, which arrives all at once and announces itself like someone kicking in a door. She has decided they are different languages that are both talking about the same feeling. She has decided they understand each other. The fifth, Seoul, is large in a way that is not intimidating, but is instead somehow generous. It keeps offering her more. Every street she turns down contains another street. Every neighborhood she learns the edges of reveals an interior she hadn't suspected. She photographs until her arms are tired, and she still feels she has barely started. The sixth thing she has learned, and she is calling it a thing she has learned rather than a thing she has noticed, because naming it as something she has simply noticed gives it a casualness she is not prepared to grant it, is that she thinks about the man in the rain more than makes any rational sense. Not obsessively. She does not lie awake constructing him. It is nothing as dramatic as that. It is more that he surfaces. The way a particular bar of music surfaces in a week you didn't expect to hear it, not intrusive, just present, rising through whatever else is happening and then quietly subsiding. She will be eating or choosing a lens or trying to read the menu board at a noodle stall, and he will be there briefly behind everything else. The height of him. The way he had laughed, which was not the laugh of a man performing amusement, but of someone who had been actually, genuinely caught off guard by something funny. The way he looked at her, not the long, assessing look she sometimes gets, which she has learned to meet head-on and not blink, but something shorter and more careful, like he was trying not to look too long. The blurred photograph is still on her camera. She has not edited it. She has not deleted it. Every time she scrolls past it in her archive, she pauses for exactly the length of time it takes to confirm what she is looking at: his retreating back, the dark jacket, the smear of rain across the lens, and then she scrolls on. She tells herself she is keeping it because it is technically interesting, the motion blur, the quality of the rain light. She tells herself this with the confidence of someone who does not entirely believe herself. Today is Saturday. No fellowship obligations, no orientation sessions, no structured visits to galleries or institutions. She has her camera, the film one, the Nikon, heavy and reliable and requiring thought in a way that digital does not, and she has the whole of Seoul, and she has absolutely no plan. Which is exactly how she prefers to begin a day that she wants to mean something. She puts on the mustard yellow jacket. She laces her boots. She steps out into the morning. Insadong morning. Insadong on a Saturday morning, before the crowds arrive, is a different city from the one that tourists photograph in the afternoon. Khadine comes early enough to find it still half asleep. The main street is narrow and not yet crowded, just a few shopkeepers rolling up their metal shutters with a noise like a long exhalation, the sound of Seoul waking itself gradually, without urgency. An old woman pushes a cart laden with persimmons, their skins the deep orange of late afternoon light compressed into fruit. The smell is sesame oil and something baking, sweet and yeasty, drifting from somewhere she cannot immediately locate. A temple is visible at the end of an alley. She can see only the curved roofline from here, its upturned corners reaching toward a sky that is pale and clear and not yet decided about the day. She moves through it slowly. This is how she moves through any new place she is trying to learn, without agenda, without a list, turning down whichever street feels right in the way that right is not a logical determination, but a physical one. A pull she has learned to trust in the years she has been doing this work. She lets Seoul teach her its grammar one alley at a time. She is a patient student of cities. She has always believed that a city will show you what it wants to show you if you stop demanding that it show you what you came to see. She photographs. Row of handmade calligraphy brushes hanging in the doorway of a narrow shop, their bristles dark and dense as lashes, suspended at different heights so that they form an unintentional wave. She photographs a grandmother sitting outside what might be her own shop, or might simply be a convenient step, both hands wrapped around a clay cup of barley tea, the steam rising between her fingers in a slow spiral. The woman does not look up. Khadine does not ask permission, because asking would change what she is seeing into something posed, and she needs the truth of it, the complete ordinariness of an old woman and a cup of tea on a step, which is also, in the right light, everything. She finds the alley with the mural almost by accident, following a smell that turns out to be paint and not something edible. Somebody has painted magnolias on the wall between two buildings floor to ceiling, the flowers rendered in something that might have been white once and has since faded to the color of old ivory, half reclaimed by time and weather. The petals are enormous and softly blurred at the edges, and the leaves are still bright where they are sheltered from the rain, and the whole thing has the quality of a memory, not faded enough to be gone, not vivid enough to be present, existing in the register of something that almost was. She stands in front of it for several minutes. She uses 4 frames on it. She thinks she might come back with different film. The cat she finds on a stone wall between a tea house and a print shop. He is gray and enormous, with the broad face of an animal that has not been required to hurry or worry in some years. He is sitting in the precise center of the wall in the manner of something that has decided it is a monument. He watches her approach with the expression of a judge who has already reached a verdict. She crouches to his level. He regards her. She raises the camera. He does not blink, does not move, does not offer anything except his absolute indifference, which she photographs because indifference in the right light is its own kind of dignity. She is happy in the specific way that she is only happy when she is working. It is not the easy happiness of rest or comfort. It is a happiness that requires something of her, that has teeth, that keeps demanding she look harder, stay longer, think more carefully about what she is seeing and why. The part of her brain that worries about money, about the fellowship, about Pearl alone in Kingston, about whether she is doing enough, being enough, making something worthy of the opportunity she has been given. That part goes quiet when she has a camera in her hand. Not silenced, just quieted. like a room where someone has turned down the volume on a television that was too loud. She photographs until the morning light shifts, the sun clearing a roofline to the east and changing everything, softening what was sharp and sharpening what was soft, and Insadong begins to fill around her. The Saturday crowd arriving in the particular way that crowds arrive in markets and historic districts, first one, then three, then suddenly everywhere. And the quality of the place changes the way the quality of a room changes when the ratio of strangers to inhabitants tips a certain way. She decides to find something to eat. She turns down a side street she hasn't tried. She is looking up because there is a painted sign above the corner she wants to photograph, an old one. The characters in a style she has been told is an older form of Korean script, faded to rust and ochre against weathered wood, and she is thinking about light, about angles, about whether she has time to rewind before she runs out of frames, and she rounds the corner. The collision. The corner is tight in the way that Insadong specializes in, where a main alley branches suddenly into something smaller and older, and at a slightly unexpected angle, so that rounding it requires a brief correction of direction that takes a person's attention for just a moment. Her attention is on the sign above the corner. His attention is on the pavement directly in front of him, because he is carrying 4 sketchbooks stacked under one arm and a takeaway coffee in the other hand, and he is thinking about a problem of composition that has been bothering him since 6 this morning. The specific problem of how to convey the weight of a thought in a face that is otherwise still. He is not looking where he is going. She is looking up. Neither of them sees the other until there is nowhere else to be but in each other's space. The sketchbooks go first. There is a moment, a fractional moment, when the whole stack tilts and has not yet fallen, and Min-Jae makes the reflexive grab of a person who knows exactly how much work is in those books and what it would mean to lose it. But the grab overbalances him and sends the coffee into the gutter instead. Lidded, thankfully. It rolls and does not spill. Then the elbow, his elbow, swinging outward as he reaches for the books, catches the side of her camera bag, which does not help. And then the loose sketches tucked between the covers of the second and third sketchbooks lift briefly and completely into the air with the beautiful, terrible freedom of things that have just been released from all obligation to stay where they were. They both crouch simultaneously. It is the automatic crouch of 2 people following the same instinct toward the same scattered things, and their heads almost knock together. She feels the air of it, the half-inch of space between their skulls. They both pull back at exactly the same moment, rocking onto their heels, and they look at each other. For Min-Jae, the next 2 seconds contain something that does not fit easily into language. He takes in the damage, which is minimal. The fault, which is shared equally and in exactly the proportions that are least convenient for assigning blame. And the face of the woman he has just walked into, which is, she is wearing a mustard yellow jacket, the oversized kind that sits on the shoulders like an intention, and she has a film camera hanging at her chest with the ease of something that has been there so long it has become part of the way she holds herself. Her locks are loose, falling forward when she crouches, the weight of them shifting as she moves, dark and rich, and catching the morning light at their edges. She has full lips and dark eyes, and the look on her face, in this first moment before either of them has spoken, is the expression of someone who is rapidly and without apparent panic assessing a situation that was not in her plan. She says sorry immediately, with the reflex of a person raised to say it fast. Then she looks at the papers spiraling gently down around them both, and she says it again, this second sorry different from the first, slower, with more weight, as though she is directing it not at him, but at each piece of paper individually, apologizing to each drawing for its brief and undignified flight. Min-Jae does not yet know what to do with any of this. He begins gathering his papers. For Khadine, the taking in is similarly rapid and similarly involuntary. She notes, the paint on his cuffs dark blue-black, dried into the linen at the left cuff in a smear that looks deliberate even though she knows it is not. The way he is already, before either of them has spoken a full sentence, sorting his papers with the practiced calm of someone who has dropped his work before and learned how to retrieve it without drama and without losing his dignity in the process. He has a method. She can see he has a method. He is checking corners first, the bent ones, smoothing them against his knee. The softness of his face surprises her. She had registered tall and layered, a cream shirt under a dark jacket, the general impression of someone who gets dressed with care but not anxiety. And then she looks at his face properly and finds that it is the face of someone whose default expression is a kind of open attentiveness. Not blank, just available. Like a face that is ready to be interested in whatever comes next. And the thing she notices most, the thing she will think about later, when he looks up, his eyes go to her camera before they go to her face. She sees him clock it, the Nikon, the film, the wear on the strap, with a look that is not quite recognition, but something adjacent to it. As though the camera tells him something about her that he finds relevant. They gather everything together. He counts his sketchbooks with his right hand while his left smooths a page that has acquired a crease in its brief freedom. She picks up a loose sketch from beside her boot. It has drifted farthest, settling against the wall of the alley with the air of something that meant to end up there. She lifts it carefully, by the corner, and holds it out. It is a quick study of hands. 2 hands, one resting in the other, rendered in a few dozen economical ink lines that somehow contain in them the specific weight of one hand inside another, the slight curl of the lower fingers, the way the upper palm presses without gripping. It is beautiful in the way that things are beautiful when they have been observed without agenda. He takes the sketch from her. Their fingers do not touch. She notices that she noticed. The sketchbook. One sketchbook remains on the ground between them, slightly open from the fall, lying on its spine with its pages fanned at an angle that makes it look, briefly, like something that has landed rather than been dropped. He is checking the recovered sketches against the inside cover of the third book, making sure they are accounted for. She is reaching for the fallen sketchbook because it is there and she is already crouching, and it is the natural thing to do, to hand it back, to complete the process of gathering, to return everything to the person it belongs to. She is faster than him. She picks it up, and as she lifts it, the sketchbook falls open in her hands to a page somewhere in the middle, and she looks down because that is what you do when something opens in front of you. She does not immediately understand what she is seeing. The drawing is in ink and pencil, the kind of combination she has seen in certain kinds of meticulous illustrative work, ink for the structure, pencil for the texture and tone, each line placed with intention. It is detailed in a way that is not photographic but is, in its own way, true. More than true. The truth that photographs sometimes miss, because they are too faithful to what was there and not faithful enough to what it felt like to be looking. It is a woman. She is laughing. Her head is slightly back, her shoulders loosened by the laugh, and she is standing somewhere that might be a city street and might be nowhere in particular. The background is suggested rather than rendered. A few lines implying architecture and light without specifying it. Her locks are falling around her face the way locks fall when a person's head goes back in genuine laughter, not arranged, not composed, but moving with her. Her lips are full. Her skin is rendered in cross-hatching that is so carefully laid, so attentive in its density and its spacing, that it conveys warmth as much as darkness, not just the fact of deep melanin-rich dark brown skin, but the quality of it. The way it absorbs and returns light simultaneously. She looks exactly like Khadine. Not approximately. Not in the generalized way that people sometimes mean when they say a drawing resembles them, shortcutting through the broadest points of similarity, locks, full lips, dark skin, close enough. Not that. The specific way. The particular angle of her jaw. The way her locks fall heavy at the front and lighter at the sides. The posture, the exact posture, the way her left shoulder drops slightly lower than her right when she is unself-conscious, which is a thing she does not know about herself and which she will learn only later, when Somi mentions it after seeing a photograph. The tilt of the laugh, the direction it comes from, up and slightly to the left, like something that started in her chest and went looking for the sky. Khadine stares at the drawing. The drawing looks back. The silence that follows lasts perhaps 3 seconds and contains, within those 3 seconds, a great deal. She turns the sketchbook slightly in her hands, not to see more of the page, but to look at the small notation in the upper right corner of the drawing where he has written the date. She can't read Korean, but she can read a date in numerals. She reads the date. 6 weeks ago. She does the arithmetic without wanting to. 6 weeks ago, she did not have a flight booked to Seoul. 6 weeks ago, the fellowship had been announced, but the cohort list was not yet public. 6 weeks ago, she was in Kingston, in Pearl's kitchen, eating ackee and saltfish and reading the fellowship letter for the 4th time, and she had never heard of Min-Jae, and she had no reason to exist in his vicinity, his imagination, his sketchbook, his anything. She looks up at him slowly. Min-Jae has gone completely still. He is watching her face rather than the sketchbook. He has known for several seconds which page it has fallen open to, has known it with the particular cold certainty of a person watching something they cannot stop happen. And he is now watching her face with the expression of someone who wrote something honest and is being forced to watch another person read it. Terrified and also unable to look away. His hands are still on the recovered sketches, holding them with more pressure than they require. He says, "It is a dream." His English is careful and precise, slightly formal in the way of someone who learned it properly rather than casually. A dream he had months ago. He drew her the morning after. He always draws his dreams in the morning, quickly, before they fade the way dreams fade when the day presses in on them. A woman laughing on a street he didn't recognize. He doesn't usually remember faces from dreams. Most dream faces are blurred or wrong, the brain's approximation of a face rather than a face itself. This one was specific. He drew it because it was specific. He pauses. He is not, she notices, performing this. He is not telling her something he thinks she wants to hear. He is telling her something that clearly still confuses him, that he has not yet made sense of, and the telling of it has the quality of a person thinking out loud about a thing they thought was private and has now become, without warning, a conversation. He has never been able to explain, he says, why that particular dream stayed with him. Most of them don't. They give up their images by mid-morning and leave no trace. This one, he glances at the page briefly, then back at her face. This one stayed. Khadine listens to all of this. She processes it in the way she processes most things she is not certain about, with a kind of measured, intelligent patience, turning it over rather than grabbing it, looking at it from multiple angles before she decides what it is. She is not a credulous person. She is not a person who leaps toward the mystical interpretation when a rational one is available. But she is also a person who has spent enough time looking carefully at the world through a lens to know that the world occasionally organizes itself into images that should not be possible and are anyway. She has photographed things she could not explain. She believes in the irreducible strangeness of coincidence. She asks, after a moment, if she can look at the other pages. Not the full sketchbook, just the pages around the drawing. She asks it quietly, without demand, in the tone of someone who is aware they are asking for something that has not been offered. He hesitates. His sketchbooks are not exactly private. He is a graphic novelist. He publishes his work. Strangers read what he makes. But the sketchbooks are where the work starts, which is different. They're honest in a way that the finished work has been edited past. The finished work is what he decided to say. The sketchbooks are what he said before he decided. And those are different things entirely, and the difference matters to him, and he is aware that handing her this sketchbook is doing something he cannot undo. He says yes. She goes through the pages slowly. She goes backwards from the drawing first, then forward, and what she finds on all sides of it is simply his ordinary work. Street scenes with the particular density of observation that mark someone who has been looking at the same streets for years and is still finding things in them. Studies of architectural details, a decorative roof tile, a gate hinge, the angle of a staircase. Hands, again, he draws hands often, she notices, with something close to obsession, as though hands are the part of people he finds most articulate. A series of character studies that might be for his graphic novel, figures caught in mid-gesture, mid-sentence, mid-thought. And then, surrounded on all sides by all his ordinary work, the drawing, the laughing woman. Khadine's jaw and Khadine's locks and Khadine's laugh, in ink and pencil, 6 weeks before either of them had any reason to be on the same street in the same city on the same Saturday morning. The ordinariness of everything around it makes it more remarkable, not less. He didn't build a mythology around it. He didn't linger. He drew what he dreamed with the diligence of a craftsman doing his daily work, and then he turned the page and drew a gate hinge, and then a character study, and then more hands, and he kept going. There is something in this, in the absence of ceremony, in the fact that he treated his own strange dream the same way he treated everything else he drew, that Khadine finds, against her better instincts, more convincing than any amount of ceremony would have been. She closes the sketchbook carefully. She holds it out. He takes it from her, one hand under the cover, one hand on the spine, and as he does, her thumb catches the edge of a page, just for a moment, and his hand closes around the spine of the book at the same moment, and there is a brief, accidental pressure of her thumb against his fingers. Less than a second. The lightest possible contact, barely more than warmth, and then it is over, and he has the sketchbook, and she has her hands back. Both of them feel it. Neither of them mentions it. She says something then, soft and almost to herself, in patois, the phrase Pearl uses for things that arrive in your life wearing the face of accident when anyone who is paying attention can see that accident is not quite the right word for them. The Jamaican shorthand for a coincidence that carries in it the feeling of having been arranged by something, not necessarily something you can name, but something. The word lives at the intersection of wonder and wry pragmatism, the place where Jamaican spiritual sensibility tends to live, acknowledging the extraordinary without requiring a theology around it. He does not understand the words. He looks at her face while she says them. And then she looks at him, and the look is not warm exactly, not yet. It is something more careful than warm, something more considered. The look of someone who has just encountered new information and is deciding, with all the intelligence at her disposal, what to do with it. She picks up her camera bag. She straightens. She turns and walks back the way she came, into the brightening morning of Insadong, without looking back. Min-Jae stays where he is for a while. He retrieves his coffee from the gutter. He holds his sketchbooks to his chest. Insadong resumes its Saturday around him, the voices, the metal shutters, the smell of sesame and something baking, a child running somewhere ahead of a laughing parent, the ordinary, relentless, beautiful noise of a city on a weekend morning. And he stands in the middle of it and does not move for a full minute. He thinks, I need to draw her again. This time her eyes open. The afternoon. This time looking directly at me. Khadine spends the afternoon walking. Not photographing, just walking, which is unusual for her. She passes through the rest of Insadong with the camera hanging at her chest and not raised once, which is something she has not done since she arrived, and which she notices the way you notice a silence that has replaced a sound you had stopped consciously hearing. She goes north from Insadong into Bukshan, where the Hanok rooftops curve against the sky in long, elegant lines, and the alleyways are so narrow that two people cannot pass without turning sideways. She walks the full length of it without stopping. She goes along the high edges of Gyeongbokgung without quite entering. She passes the Great South Gate and keeps walking, glancing in but not ready, not today, for the deliberate grandeur of it. She wants streets for now. Unnamed streets, without significance. She is thinking about the sketchbook, which she is also, simultaneously, not thinking about. She is holding the thought the way she holds a photograph before she decides whether it works, at arm's length, examined sidelong, not yet committed. She has a method for strange information. She gives it air. She does not press it. She lets it settle at its own pace and she keeps walking. She calls Somi somewhere around the time the afternoon starts to think about becoming evening. Somi answers in the middle of what sounds like a substantial meal, the audio evidence of chopsticks and a bowl and the background murmur of a restaurant. Khadine describes the collision. She is careful about which parts she describes. She tells Somi about the corner, about the sketchbooks going everywhere, about the coffee rolling into the gutter, about the papers lifting into the air. She does not describe the drawing. Not yet. The drawing does not feel like something she is ready to give to another person's interpretation. Somi, chopsticks audible, asks if he was handsome. Khadine says that is not the point. Somi says that means yes. Khadine says she has to go. Somi says, with the cheerful certainty of someone who has decided something, that she is going to want to know how this ends. Khadine ends the call. She is, against her will, smiling. She finds the restaurant by following the smell, a particular savory warmth that turns out to belong to a small place with 4 tables and a handwritten menu and a woman behind the counter who looks at Khadine with the expression of a person deciding in real time whether she is going to be difficult to serve. Khadine points at the bowl of the person at the next table, which is the efficient solution she has developed for not being able to read menus and not wanting to miss good food on a technicality. The woman nods. The sundubu jjigae arrives in a small earthenware bowl, still furiously boiling, the surface a deep orange red that is almost too vivid to be real, the tofu lying in it in soft clouds. The whole thing fragrant with something she can't name yet, but will later learn is dried anchovy broth. It is too hot to eat. She sits with it steaming in front of her, and she photographs the steam, the way it moves, the particular quality of heat made visible. She photographs the bowl, the color of the broth, a small side dish of kimchi that has arrived unbidden on her left. She photographs her own hands around the sides of the bowl, absorbing the warmth through her palms. She photographs the reflection of the window in the surface of the broth before she lifts her spoon and breaks it. She eats slowly. The tofu is the softest thing she has put in her mouth since she arrived in Seoul. It gives immediately, barely requiring pressure, dissolving into warmth and flavor. The broth is deep and hot and complex, with the clean heat of gochugaru rising through it. It is the best thing she has eaten all week, and she did not order it. She merely pointed at it on someone else's table, which seems like exactly how good things are supposed to arrive. She is happy and unsettled simultaneously. Both fully, not in diminished partial measures. Seoul keeps doing this to her, holding the two things open at once. She thinks about what Director Yoon said on the first day of orientation, in the middle of a speech about the fellowship's intention, in a tone that made it sound like an aside, but that she had the feeling was the whole point. Seoul will show you something about yourself that your home country was too familiar to reveal. She had written it down in her notebook with a faint internal skepticism, the way she writes down things she is not sure she believes, but does not want to lose. She looks at it differently this afternoon. She is not yet sure what she is being shown, but she thinks she is being shown something. Min-Jae, that evening. The narrator steps back slightly here, just for this section, just far enough to let another set of eyes look at what is happening. Min-Jae Lee is in his studio by 4 in the afternoon, which is where he usually is by 4 in the afternoon. The studio is a small rented room above a tea shop in Insadong, 1 flight of stairs, a door that sticks in damp weather, a space just large enough for his drawing table, his reference shelves, his flat files full of reference images and archived sketches, and the accumulated visual material of 8 years of graphic novel work. The window looks onto the alley below. The room smells, permanently and pleasantly, of chrysanthemum from the tea shop below and ink from himself. He has been here for 6 hours. In those 6 hours, he has produced almost nothing. This is unusual for him. Min-Jae is a disciplined worker. He is not a person who waits for inspiration because he learned early that inspiration is a thing that rewards people who are already at their desk when it arrives. He works regular hours with the regularity of a person who understands that the graphic novel he is currently on contract to complete will not draw itself, and that sentiment will not persuade his publisher to adjust the deadline. He is, by most available evidence, a professional. This afternoon he has drawn a single page of his current project, decided it is wrong in a way he cannot immediately fix, turned it face down, and spent the remaining 5 hours and 40 minutes of his studio time doing anything other than look at it. He has reorganized his brush collection by size. He has made tea 3 times. He has stood at his window for a combined total of perhaps 40 minutes, watching the alley below with the attention of a man who is looking for something he cannot specify. He opens his sketchbook to the drawing of the laughing woman. He has looked at it many times in the 6 weeks since he made it, with the curiosity of an artist returning to something he doesn't fully understand. With a faint, familiar embarrassment of seeing his own work with fresh eyes and finding it more exposed than he remembered. With the practical, occasional consideration of whether it might belong somewhere in his current graphic novel project, which is a story about memory and return and the places people carry inside them that have nothing to do with geography. He has considered the drawing the way a craftsman considers a piece of raw material. Could this become something? Is this the beginning of something? He has not, in any of these many revisitations, felt what he feels now. He is looking at the drawing and he is seeing her. Not the woman he dreamed, the woman he met this morning on a corner in Insadong, who crouched in the alley and apologized to his scattered papers individually. The woman who held his sketchbook with 2 hands, by the covers, the careful way a person holds something they recognize as someone else's. The woman who said something in a language he didn't know, in a tone he understood completely, and then walked away. He draws. Not her face, not yet, he is not ready. That requires a different quality of attention than he currently has available. He draws what he remembers, the mustard yellow jacket, the way it sat on her shoulders like she had decided on it rather than merely put it on. He draws her crouching, the way she crouched to gather his things without waiting to be asked, the natural efficiency of it. He draws the camera at her chest, gets the weight of it right, the way it sat against her sternum with the comfortable familiarity of something that has lived there a long time. He draws the line of her, the posture, the way she carried herself through a city that was not hers yet, with the ease of a person who knows how to belong to places that don't yet know her name. He tells himself as he draws that this is simply what artists do. They observe. They record. They are interested in interesting things. She is an interesting person, a photographer on a fellowship, Jamaican, clearly good at her work given the way she held that camera, in soul for something specific and purposeful. The dream, the drawing, the collision. These are remarkable coincidences. Remarkable coincidences happen. He is interested in her the way an artist is interested in a compelling subject. This is a familiar feeling. He knows this feeling well. He draws for 2 hours. He goes home at 9. He sleeps. He dreams of a woman laughing on a street he recognizes this time. It is Insadong. It is the corner where they met, the tight corner where a main alley branches into something smaller and older. In the dream, the morning light is doing the thing it did today, coming in at an angle that makes everything slightly golden and slightly too vivid, and she is standing in it, and she is laughing, and in this dream, unlike all the other times he has dreamed this. She turns around. He sees her face clearly. She is looking directly at him. Her eyes are open and dark and completely unguarded, the way eyes are in dreams when the rules of waking caution do not apply, and she is saying something he cannot hear because the dream does not give him the audio. He is reaching toward her not to touch, just to get close enough to hear. He wakes up reaching for his sketchbook before he is fully conscious. Before he has placed himself in his own bedroom, before he has registered the time or the light or the fact that he is awake. He is reaching, and then his hand finds the sketchbook on the nightstand where he always leaves it, and he opens it, and he draws. He draws until 3 a.m. He draws her face from the dream, the direct look, the unguarded eyes, the particular quality of expression that he will spend 3 more sketchbook pages trying to get right and will not quite achieve tonight, not fully. Because there is something in it he has not yet understood well enough to render. He does not tell himself that this is significant. He is an artist. He draws things that compel him. This is simply a thing that compels him. He will keep drawing until he understands why. He does not fully understand, not yet, what he is beginning. 3 days later. 3 days pass. The fellowship has a full week of them, a Tuesday visit to the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, where Khadine spends 40 minutes in front of a single large format photograph of the Nakdong River in winter and thinks about time. A Wednesday studio session where she develops the first 2 rolls from her Nikon and stands in the red-lit darkroom watching her soul arrive slowly in the developer tray, the images emerging from nothing the way images do, with a patience that never stops feeling like a minor miracle. A Thursday morning talk by a Korean photographer whose work she has admired for 3 years, who is smaller in person than she had imagined and who says, when Khadine asks a question about restraint, that restraint is not about removing things. It is about knowing which things were never yours to keep. She eats jokbal with Somi on Thursday afternoon at a small place Somi has been recommending for 2 days. Braised pig's trotters, gelatinous and rich, eaten with thin slices of fermented kimchi and wrapped in perilla leaves that smell like nothing. She has a comparison for herbal and clean and slightly anise adjacent without being anise. She has strong feelings about the jokbal. Most of them are positive. She photographs it before she eats it, which Somi finds amusing and Khadine finds non-negotiable. She calls Pearl on Friday evening. The connection is slightly lagged, the video feed resolving Pearl's face in and out of clarity in a way that gives her the particular dreamlike quality of a person glimpsed through rain. Pearl is in the kitchen, always the kitchen. Pearl has lived in that kitchen for 30 years. Khadine describes Seoul. She describes the subway and the convenience stores and Insadong and the photography fellowship and the National Museum. She describes the sundubu jjigae without mentioning the circumstances of the restaurant. She does not mention the sketchbook. Pearl asks if she is eating enough. Khadine says yes, Pearl. Pearl says she looks thin from here. Khadine points out that Pearl cannot see her clearly through this connection. Pearl says she can see her just fine. Khadine asks what's happening at home. Pearl says nothing has happened at home. Pearl says something has happened at the market, but it's a long story, and she'll tell it when Khadine is back. Khadine says she won't be back for 8 weeks. Pearl says she can wait. They say goodbye 3 times the way they always do, once actually, twice as Pearl remembers one more thing, a 3rd time when they have run out of things and are simply glad to be, for a moment, in each other's frequency. On the 3rd day, Saturday again, the second one Khadine is in a small cafe in Insadong. It is the kind of place that exists in Insadong in small numbers, the kind that has 3 tables and a handwritten menu on a chalkboard she cannot read and a single owner who is also the barista and also, apparently, the person who decides what you need before you have finished deciding for yourself. The owner brought her something she hadn't ordered when she sat down: barley tea, warm, and a small sweet she doesn't know the name of. Made of something with the texture of compressed grain and a flavor that is subtly sweet and slightly nutty and entirely correct for 11 in the morning in a cafe this quiet. She ate it slowly and gratefully and did not ask what it was because asking would have required more Korean than she currently possesses and also because she trusted it, and it turned out she was right too. She is working through her notebook, not her shooting log, her thinking notebook, the one where she writes about what she's seen rather than planning what she'll shoot when the door opens. She looks up because the door is directly in her eye line and looking up is automatic and Min-Jae walks in. He stops. She looks at him. The cafe is so small that there is genuinely no ambiguity about whether they have seen each other. There is nowhere to look that is not the other person. The 3 tables are arranged in a configuration that allows for privacy in a larger space and offers none in a room this size. He had been looking for her. He does not say this. He has been walking Insadong streets for almost 2 hours, not all of those hours directed, most of them ostensibly for other purposes, buying ink, returning a library book, the ordinary logistics of a Saturday. But he had been walking in the specific way of a person who is paying attention at corners, and each time he rounded one he had told himself, with the full sincerity of someone who wanted very much to believe it, that if he saw her it would be coincidence, and if he didn't it would be fine, and either way he was simply walking, and this had nothing to do with the 3 sketchbook pages he had filled with her face before he came out. He asks if he can sit down. She looks at the chair across from her, which is the only other chair at her table, and she gestures at it with the economy of a person who has made a decision and is not going to make a production of it. He sits. The owner comes without being asked and puts tea in front of him, which suggests he comes here regularly enough to have a usual. He wraps his hands around the cup. She closes her notebook. They talk. He asks about the photography fellowship, what brought her to it, how long she's been working, what kind of photography. She tells him, documentary, portrait, the long, slow work of being present in a place until it stops performing for you and starts being itself. He listens. She asks about the graphic novel, what it's about, what stage he's at. He tells her, a story about a man who can't go home, or who can, but finds that home has reorganized itself around his absence and no longer fits him the way it did. The kind of story, he says, that you don't know you're living until you start drawing it. She asks if it's autobiographical. He considers this for a moment with visible care, the way he seems to consider most things. He says, not literally, but honestly. He asks where in Jamaica she's from. Kingston, she says, and she watches his face the way she has learned to watch faces when she says Kingston to someone who has never been, the faint rearrangement that sometimes happens, not unkind. Just the brief recalibration of a person adjusting their mental image to accommodate a place they only know by reputation, by news, by the vague geography of someone else's imagination. His face does something different. He tilts his head slightly, not the tilt of confusion, but the tilt of interest, the angle a person's head takes when they are about to ask something they actually want to know the answer to. He asks what Kingston sounds like. Not what it looks like. Not what it's known for, not what she misses, not the question people usually ask, which is a tourism question wearing the clothes of curiosity. What it sounds like. As though he already knows that sound is where a city keeps its truth. She did not expect to talk about Kingston today. She had not planned for it. She opens her mouth to give a short answer. She is a private person about home. She has learned to carry it carefully, and instead, she finds that once she starts, she doesn't want to stop. She tells him about the particular noise of her neighborhood in the morning, the specific ratio of bird to motor to music that starts around 5:30 and builds by increments through the hour. Each element layering on top of the last until by 7 it is a full sound, complete, like something composed rather than accumulated. She tells him about Pearl's radio through the kitchen wall, always on, always talk radio in the morning and gospel on Sundays, the radio as constant as the heat, as familiar as the color of the walls. She tells him about rain on a zinc roof, which she has tried to explain to people before and has never found the right words for. It is not the polite tap of rain on glass or the white noise of rain on flat surfaces. It is percussive and total and loud in a way that is not violent, but is completely present, rain insisting on its own reality, rain refusing to be ignored. She tells him you do not hear rain on a zinc roof from another room. You hear it in your whole body. She tells him about the market on Saturday mornings, the voices, the specific registers of negotiation and greeting that are indistinguishable to an outside ear and perfectly legible to anyone who grew up in them. The sound of prices called in patois, which is a language that carries its commerce in the same register as its affection. The smell of the market she is not describing because he asked about sound, but the sound is so wound up with the smell of fresh peppers and fish and overripe mango that she cannot fully separate them, and so she mentions it anyway. The church on Sundays, the one whose choir practices until 10 at night on Saturdays so that the whole street Friday and Saturday evening is accompanied by harmonies that escape through open windows and settle over everything. The particular frequency of a Caribbean city that runs on warmth and argument and music, argument not as conflict, but as conversation, music not as entertainment, but as infrastructure. The way the city holds all of it simultaneously and does not resolve the tension between the noise and the beauty because it doesn't see them as tension. They are just both true at once. She stops. She has been talking for 20 minutes. She is not certain, precisely, when she stopped editing herself, when the short answer she had planned became all of this. Became the market and Pearl's radio and rain on a zinc roof and the particular sound of Kingston loving and arguing its way through a Saturday morning. She is slightly embarrassed, in the mild way of a person who has said more than they intended to, not because what they said was wrong, but because they didn't expect to mean so much of it. Min-Jae has not looked away once. She notices this while it is happening, and she notices it again now in retrospect, both the looking and the quality of it, the way he listened as he draws, with total attention. Not the nodding and encouraging expressions of someone performing attentiveness, but the stillness of a person who is actually receiving what is being given to them. It is not a comfortable feeling. It is better than comfortable. It is the feeling of being heard by someone who is actually listening, which is a rarer thing than it should be, and which she does not take for granted. After a moment, carefully, with the care of someone who is aware they are about to ask something that might change the temperature of the conversation, he asks if he could sketch her while she talks. Just the hands, he says. Or the way she holds her tea. Not posed, just whatever she is already doing. She says no. She says it without sharpness, without explanation, with the simple completeness of a person who knows what she wants and is comfortable with that knowledge. Just no. He nods immediately. He puts his sketchbook away. It had been beside his tea on the table, closed. He must have taken it out at some point without her noticing, or she had noticed and not remarked on it. He tucks it into the inside pocket of his jacket. He does not ask again. He does not ask why, or try to revise the terms of the request, or make a face that requires her to feel responsible for his disappointment. He simply puts the sketchbook away and picks up his tea, and the conversation continues as though the request had not been made. She drinks her tea. He drinks his. Outside, Insadong does its Saturday things, the voices, the footsteps, the periodic percussion of a nearby shop owner moving stock. The owner of the cafe brings them both more tea without asking, which she does for Min-Jae out of familiarity and for Khadine, apparently, out of a decision that has been made about her character. Inside, at a table so small that there is not much room between their elbows, two people who were strangers 5 days ago sit and discover, with the alertness of people who were not expecting it, who came out this morning for ink and notebooks and a thinking journal and had not budgeted for this, that the world has just become, with no particular announcement, slightly more interesting than it was. Khadine walks home through the early evening, when Seoul is doing the thing it does in the hour before full dark, gathering itself, the light going amber and then deeper, the city shifting from its daytime register into the one it saves for after. The neon beginning to matter in the way it can't matter in full sun. She photographs 3 things on the way. The first, the shadow of a telephone line across a stone wall, the way the shadow bisects the wall at an angle that is almost, but not quite diagonal, the wall old enough that its surface is not flat, but slightly irregular, so that the shadow moves over it with a texture it would not have on a smooth surface. She uses the last frame on her roll for it. She will be glad she did. The second, a child's shoe on a stone step outside a doorway. A single shoe, small, red-soled, left with its toe pointing outward as though the foot inside it simply dissolved and the shoe sat down where it was. She does not know the story. She photographs the fact of it and carries the not knowing with her, which is how she has always believed photographs are supposed to work, not answering, asking. The third, the sky above Insadong, which at this hour is doing something that she has photographed before and will photograph again, and has not yet found a way to adequately capture, pink at the western edges where the sun is making its exit. The pink deepening through a range of rose and coral that takes perhaps 10 minutes to complete, and above it a blue that deepens as she watches, the specific blue that Seoul does in the minutes before full dark. Not navy. Not indigo. Something between the two, saturated and very clear, the kind of blue that suggests depth rather than surface. She does not have a name for it yet. She has learned enough about herself as a photographer to know that she does not need a name for a thing in order to want to get closer to it. She is thinking, as she walks, about the drawing. About the conversation in the cafe, the length of it, the way it didn't feel long while it was happening and feels significant now that it's over. About the fact that he asked what Kingston sounds like and nobody has ever asked her that, not the journalists who have interviewed her about her work, not the grant committees who have read her artist statements, not the people who have taken her photographs off gallery walls and held them in their hands and said they could feel where these were made. He asked what it sounds like and she talked for 20 minutes and he listened to every word. She has not yet connected him to the rain. She does not yet know that the dark jacket retreating through the Insadong downpour 8 days ago and the man who listened to 20 minutes of Kingston this afternoon are the same person. The photograph is on her camera, 3 weeks back in the archive. She has not looked at it since the morning after she took it. When she gets home, the fellowship apartment, small and clean and smelling of someone else's laundry detergent, which she has come to find oddly comforting, she sits on the floor with her camera and her thinking journal, and she begins to review the day's shots. The telephone wire shadow. The child's shoe. The sky in 17 different stages of its evening deepening. The steam above the sundabajigi from the week before. The grandmother's hands around the barley teacup. The mural of fading magnolias. She keeps scrolling. Past this week, past the first days, past the orientation morning when she photographed the fellowship cohort at breakfast, past the airport layover in Tokyo where she photographed the departure board at midnight, the names of cities lit up like a promise. She scrolls until she arrives at the rain photograph. The blurred dark jacket. The half-turn, the suggestion of a face. The rain smearing across the lens. The particular quality of light that Insadong produces in the rain, which she still thinks is beautiful even now. She looks at it for a long time. Longer than she usually looks at anything. She is a fast editor, trained to know quickly what she is looking at and whether it is what she needs. This one she looks at for a long time. She does not yet know it is him. She doesn't have enough of the image, the blur, the angle, the rain. She is not a person who leaps to conclusions without evidence, and she does not leap now. But she holds the thought of the photograph next to the afternoon she has just had, the way you hold 2 transparencies up to the light to see if the details align, and something in her, The part that is made of pattern recognition and long attention and years of looking carefully at things until they give up their information. That part is very quiet and very still. Seoul, she thinks, is doing something. She doesn't know yet what. But she thinks of the phrase Pearl uses, the one she said out loud this morning in the alley without meaning to, the one Min-Jae didn't understand the words of, but seemed to understand anyway, and she thinks, yes. That? Something that is wearing the clothes of accident and does not quite fit them. She goes to the window. The evening is fully dark now, the blue she photographed resolved at last into night. The city is doing its evening things, the lights, the movement, the particular quality of Seoul after dark which is not less, but different, not quieter but changed in register, the daytime noise replaced by a nighttime noise that is equally full and equally alive. She stands at the window and she does not photograph it and she does not write about it. She just looks at it, the way she sometimes allows herself to just look, storing it without instrument in the part of her that is not a photographer but a person. Somewhere in Insadong, in a small rented studio above a tea shop, a man is sitting at a drawing table by lamplight, the window open to the alley below, working by hand in the specific silence that artists build around themselves when they are doing something that requires their whole attention. He is drawing. She doesn't know this. She is at her window and he is at his, and between them the city continues its enormous, indifferent, gorgeous life, carrying them both in it without noticing, the way cities carry the lives that happen inside them, without ceremony, without comment, simply by being the place where things occur. She doesn't know he is drawing by lamplight. She just knows that Seoul, tonight, feels like it might be on her side. She's not sure yet what that means. She has decided she can wait to find out. Kingston to Seoul. Episode 2, The Drawing. Written for the year. Gold Thread Studios. Coming next. Episode 3, Daehyun's World. The fellowship cohort visits a glass tower in Gangnam. Khadine is called to a private meeting. A man in a very expensive suit tells her she doesn't belong. She already has 4 responses ready. She chooses the most devastating one, silence.